A new video shows the moment jail officers found Sandra Bland hanging in her prison cell 3 days after she was arrested in a traffic stop. You can see a female attendant checking on Bland there, then calling on another officer to join her. More officers followed and later an EMS crew. The sheriff's office says CPR was performed but was not successful. The 28-year-old was charged with assaulting a public servant after authorities say she allegedly kicked the officer who pulled her over. Her family claims this video shows the arrest. NBC News has not verified the footage, and we don't know what happened in the moments preceding. A new dashcam video is expected to be released later today. Bland's death was ruled a suicide in the state autopsy, something her relatives have questioned. The Texas DA now says it's being investigated as thoroughly as a murder case. And joining me now is attorney and legal analyst Brian Claypool. Brian, thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having me, Jose.
So the investigation is still underway, but from what we know so far in the videos we've just seen, what stands out in your mind?
What stands out in my mind the most, Jose, is that these jailhouse guards did not check on Sandra Bland at all when she was there. It's my understanding that all they did was hit an intercom button and then try to speak to her to see if she was okay inside her cell. That is not the proper practices and procedures for jailhouse guards. They need to be walking through. What are the procedures? Well, they need to be walking through those cells to look inside to see if inmates are okay, number one. Number two, they need to be documenting each time they go to check on an inmate in a cell. I had a case a couple years ago where a young man in jail nearly died of a staph infection because the jailhouse guards were not responding to his request for medical aid. I learned in that case that you've got to document each time you see an inmate. You've got to go look and see the inmate. So that raises a suspicion to me. Another thing we need to be looking at is what does the booking intake form tell us? Because every time an inmate is registered into a jail, Jose, a form has to be filled out. They have to be interviewed. For example, do you have any health issues? Because, for example, staph infection, that's contagious. You've got to be segregated. Do you have any mental health issues? If you're suicidal, we've got to give you special treatment. So where is that intake form? She had to have been interviewed. They had to have been on notice if she was suicidal till she posed a threat to herself, and they should have escalated their duty of care to watch her.
And Brian, let's talk a little bit about that, because there is, I think, a fundamental first point, which is an interview with someone that you bring in, unless the person is uncooperative. Now, there are a lot of questions about Bland's mental health. Some of her Facebook posts, she talked about suffering from PTSD. But if you don't say that to someone who's interviewing you, what are the responsibilities of the officers who have that person in their care?
Well, that's a good point. You get to the point of what's called notice. In order for there to be some criminal or even civil liability here, there's got to be some evidence that the police department or the jailhouse guards had some type of notice that Sandra Bland had a mental health issue or was potentially suicidal. And how do we learn that? Well, if you look at the videotape, Jose, when she's detained outside the car, she seems perfectly fine. She was reaching for her phone. She was trying to tape it. Then she complimented another gentleman who was a witness who taped it. She looked okay. So if she then goes to the jail and she's interviewed and she does say, well, I'm fine, I don't have any depression, I don't have any medication I'm taking for depression, then arguably then the jailhouse guards are not on notice, but they still have a duty to check on her periodically by visually looking to see if she's okay.
You're saying go to the cell and look in.
Oh, absolutely. Another issue you got to look at here is what is the ratio of inmates to the jailhouse guards? Doesn't look to me like that's a highly populated jail cell. What is the reason why they didn't look and see if her? Are they upset because she was, assaulting an officer because she was being offensive? Were they potentially retaliating? Could they have checked on the cell? Are there other black inmates in there who they did check on, but they didn't check on her? Those are the issues you got to look at. Yes.
Brian Claypool, it's good to see you. Thanks for being with me this morning. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. You bet.